Welcome to 360 Money Matters, where financial planners Billy and Andrew talk all things financial planning. This podcast aims to increase your knowledge and confidence with all things money. Each week, they will cover topics like wealth creation strategies, investment principles, creating passive income, paying off your debt faster, and much, much more, so you can live a life on your terms without limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Money Matters podcast. I am Billy and I'm joined by my co-host
Andrew, and joining us here today is our good friend and real estate agent, Golan Flamm.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for it.
Glad to have you onto the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about?
Well, real estate agent on the podcast. What do you think the topic is today?
Put it on me. That's all right. I can.
You're gonna host this. You're gonna be a guest on it. Yeah.
All right.
no pressure here.
No pressure. Well, we can talk about how the market's changed since interest rate increases. There's been 8 increases since May, I believe. The latest one was yesterday, correct?
That's right.
That's right. So there's definitely been a shift in the market in terms of how buyers are behaving. There's no longer fear of missing out. There's fear of paying too much. They're not in a hurry. There's no sense of urgency. They're highly critical. They're unrealistic, and there's less of them around. The buyer pool is shallow. So it's a huge difference to what we were experiencing the last 2.5 years. And agents, we have to adapt and pivot, and we have to educate our vendors even more so than we ever have before.
Yeah, I guess that's probably a hard one from my perspective, and maybe even before we pivot in that, we might actually do a proper intro.
I was just about to say that. I was waiting to jump right into it.
Well, no, I think we just got too excited because obviously we know Golan and we've been doing a lot of work together. But Golan is one of the directors of Hodges Real Estate Agent in Caulfield, and helps us with a lot of our clients just from either a selling or a buying perspective, but just from an advice point of view for them to be able to bounce ideas off somebody who's impartial. There's times when you're talking to clients about particular properties that they're looking at and there's no vested interest. We're really fortunate that, and I can say this from a personal level, but what we see with Golan is what we get, and we're very comfortable talking to our clients and referring Golan business because, you give them that advice and it's straightforward, it's timely, there's no sales angle, there's no BS, and I thought we'd get the intro out the way, but that's Golan. And
thank you.
Maybe you can just tell us beforehand, Golan, just the composite and the makeup of the agency.
Sure, yeah. So we're Hodges Caulfield. It's me, my brother, father and sister, and we've got a team of 23. We manage over 1,100 properties. We have a sales team of, at the moment, 5, and we're looking to grow that. We manage properties all over the southeastern suburbs, and we sell wherever our relationships take us. Obviously, the majority is in Caulfield and surrounds, but I've got something at the moment, like I said earlier, that I'm selling in Baronia. Earlier this year, I've sold something in Clyde and in Berwick. So we go wherever our relationships take us.
Yep. Yeah, brilliant. So look, we've already sort of gotten into it a little bit, but tell us, from a ground level, and I think what we appreciate when we're talking to real estate agents is you're not looking at just headline statistics. You're not looking at anything that's overly generic. And so obviously your perspective is probably skewed a little bit in the sense that it's southeastern suburbs within Melbourne. But where are you where are you seeing things at the moment? How are you seeing the market? How are you seeing both buyers and sellers and that interaction between them?
I think I know the media is projecting this and saying the market's doing that and it's going to crash, and it's certainly not going to crash. That's just a lot of hysteria, and it's not going to crash.
It's good for the clicks.
So it's great for the clicks. The market has come off, and it has to come off when we've had such a buoyant 2.5 years, a frantic 2.5 years. But when interest rates go up and affordability decreases, it's going to hit prices. So I feel that depending on the asset class and the areas, the specific suburbs, things have come off anywhere from 8 to 15%. A-grade properties are still doing relatively well because there's less of them out there. There's the discretionary sellers are not selling. There's less stock, so demand is meeting supply to a degree, so it's holding up prices. So we're still getting deals done. It's just different to the way we're getting deals done before. There aren't 4 to 6 bidders. There aren't 60 to 80 groups coming through an inspection. I'm generalising, of course. The average number of people coming through is a lot lower. It's probably 30 to 50. The amount of contract requests, the amount of second visits, the amount of people actually wanting to put their hand up and bid or even approach us and ready to buy, it's a lot lower than before. So there's less buyers that we're dealing with. But prices have gone down, but I feel that they're sort of holding up. But now there's been an interest rate increase yesterday. We won't know the effect of that until another 2-3 weeks. There's a lag effect always.
Yeah, so are you finding you spoke about discretionary sellers? So you're finding that there's a smaller pool of people who are in that position and they're just like, okay, I've got an A-grade property, let's go for it. Versus, I imagine what's happening a lot now is that people who need to sell are selling or starting to consider to sell. Is that kind of what we're seeing in the market?
Yeah, I think what I'm finding is people who are selling, whether it's A grade or B or C or D grade, they're selling for a reason. It's situational. They're not. Anyone trying to sell now is not trying to capitalise on the market. Even though there's less good properties, A-grade properties on the market, they're not being opportunistic. It's situational. They're motivated by finance, situation. It could be that they're moving states, they're upsizing, they're downsizing, they're changing their portfolio a bit, or at the instruction of their financial planner. So they don't always tell us everything. Us agents, we try to qualify and read between the lines. Some will tell us everything, but most of the time they don't. So we have to try and read between the lines. But whoever's selling now, they're motivated by something. They're not capitalised. They're not being opportunistic.
Yep. And obviously what's holding up the market or what's holding prices where they are is, yes, there may be, less buyers on the market and seems to be what the media is focusing all of their time and attention on. But on the flip side, there's less sellers on the market. And so until there's an excess of demand, only then will prices really feel the hit. And from what you're saying, you're obviously experiencing some sort of a decline in prices, but that is, again, and what we've spoken about on the podcast many times before, that's off the back of some pretty, fantastic years for people that own property. Yeah. So taking it in context is definitely...
Definitely the market has to change. It can't stay the same. The rental market changes, the sale market changes. There are external factors and there are internal factors, but we can't always have a buoyant market. I mean, it was unsustainable. As an agent, it was great, but it came with its challenges. It was hard to get more stock because stock was selling so fast. It's a good problem to have. But as an agent, I've been doing it for 16 years and I've seen all different types of markets, and every market is very, COVID was different, the first wave, the second wave, the GFC was different, the Royal Commission was different. Everything has its different flavour and environment and sentiment. So we just have to understand it and we have to educate our clients accordingly on both sides.
Yeah. And on the buyer's front, I imagine in this type of market, and I'm not in the market, but I'm putting myself in that position. If I was, I'd kind of probably have this unrealistic expectation around what I'm going to buy and how much I'm going to pay for it. Yeah. And I imagine, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that what you're experiencing? And if you are, how do you manage that? Because that'd just be an absolute pain in the backside.
Yeah, listen, typically buyers don't listen to us agents because we're working on behalf of the vendor. They only really listen to us when they have emotional attachment to a property and they want to buy it. Yep. Regardless of the market, a buyer moves through 3 stages of their buying process. They start off unrealistic and uneducated, then they become educated and unrealistic, whether it's emotionally or financially. They're not ready. Yep. The 3rd stage is when they're emotionally ready, financially ready, mentally ready, and because of that, they're realistic. We're finding that in this market, the buyer going through that 3-phase process is taking a lot longer, and those people just won't buy. Yep. And that's what's happening. They're waiting. A lot of them are waiting for the market to drop by 20-30%. It's not going to happen. It's just the system won't allow for it. The banks won't allow it. The government won't allow it. It's just not going to happen. So, and they don't realise, and you can talk more about this than me in terms of their affordability and pre-approvals, that I'm finding when I speak to a buyer month after month after the interest rate increase, their affordability goes down a heck of a lot, far more than what the property prices have gone down. So they're basically being complicit in being chased out of an asset class, and they're doing it themselves. They're creating that. Yeah. It's better to, a lot of the people that I've spoken to, and again, just a disclaimer, I'm not a financial planner, but a lot of the very successful people that I've worked with and met and know, they've made a lot of good money from borrowed money. And if you've got the opportunity to borrow more money and get into a better asset class, you capitalise on that opportunity. Obviously, as long as you can service the debt, but a lot of them they're unrealistic. But all we can do is educate them. But if there's no emotional attachment and want to buy that property, they won't listen to us. That's around. No, just don't. Yep. That's why we meet buyers and they'll say, "Oh, we've been looking for." I always laugh about it. I'll ask a buyer part of my qualifying questionnaire, how long have you been looking for? Some of the times they'll say, "Oh, not long, about a year and a half." It's a long time. Wow. then sometimes I'll ask another buyer and they'll say, "Oh, forever." I'm like, "What do you mean? How long? 2 months?" So depending on their mindset, their occupation, certainly I don't want to try and pigeonhole, but it's true. Accountants behave in a certain way, salespeople behave in a certain way, teachers behave in a certain way, nurses behave in a certain way. So it just depends on their mindset. But I've met buyers that you can tell they're going to be looking for a while.
Yeah. Yep.
And so on the purchasing side of things, obviously there's a little bit less activity, but how are you finding the rental market in this environment as well?
Yeah, so the rental market, it's all flipped, where the sale market was really buoyant and the rental market was very challenging over COVID. Now the rental market's really strong. There's less vacancies, there's a lot more demand. People have moved back out of home from COVID. The people who aren't buying, what are they doing? They're renting. So we're finding that, we're scrambling to find more properties for potential tenants. During COVID, everyone's rent roll blew out to, I think, 10% of their overall rent roll on average. Wow. And it was really hard to get tenants in there, and landlords were offering everything they could to try and get good, solid tenants in their properties. And now it's, people are offering a month in advance, 6 months in advance, more. Not that they have to, because it's not incumbent upon them to offer more, but as a competitive leverage, they're offering more to try and get the property because they keep missing out. So, the rental market's going to continue to strengthen, because as the sale market weakens, the rental market has to strengthen.
Yeah. Yep. I guess that's just a natural progression of how it works.
Yep.
And on the rental market, I mean, this is probably hyped up from the media, or it just catches my attention when it's in there. But in an environment like this, where there's less availability and people are needing to get in, are you finding that with your opens that you're getting huge amounts of groups through?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's an issue.
A lot of applications.
Yep.
And a lot of, obviously, time for us spending going through those applications.
Yep.
There's definitely a lack of supply at the moment.
So probably just something that I want to hone into to give our listeners and our viewers some sort of value here with this. But if you're making an application to rent a property that you particularly like, and there's 20 applications that are going in, is there any way that you can stand out? Is there anything that you can do differently to try and get yourself to the front of the queue?
Yeah, there are little things which people have heard before probably, but I'll add to it or just remind them. So, we're working with people all the time, and they're working with us in terms of potential tenants. They're working with the leasing consultant, with the property manager, and it's us talking to the landlord about each application. So what is really helpful is to firstly make sure the application is filled out properly. The amount of applications we get where it's half filled out, it's missing information. If you go out of your way to provide as much information as possible, then it's telling of your personality. It also shows that you're, quite pedantic, you're thorough, you're responsible. And if you add a cover letter on the top, not a long cover letter, just 3 to 5 sentences about who you are, why this property suits, and why you're going to love this property and make it your home. That application, as long as you can service with your income, that will probably, a lot of the time, will win the favour of the landlord, because we'll say, listen, this is a lovely couple or a lovely person. Yep. That'll win the favour over an average application offering more per week. Because you'd rather a good tenant than a tenant that offers more, because maybe they won't look after the property, maybe they won't pay. So provide as much information as possible and write a cover letter, and just be personable when you're talking to the leasing consultant and the property manager. If you're going to have a short fuse, and you might have a bad day, but if it comes through to the property manager or the leasing consultant, the landlord, they're going to have a conversation with the landlord. The landlord will say, well, what were they like? And we're human. We're going to say, well, they were a bit stroppy with us. But if we say, listen, they've written a cover letter, they've provided all the information, they're really lovely people, they're bubbly. I'm not suggesting to be bubbly if you're not bubbly, but just be human. It's just the human interaction can really go a long way.
It's a person game.
It's a person game. And, if you provide that information and you're quite personable, that will definitely put you towards the top.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Wanting to change maybe the topic of conversation a little bit as well. So had a bit of a recap on obviously the rental market, the sale market, where things are at. flipping it into, you know, a bit of value towards the listeners around when you are evaluating a property or when you're going through, you know, a property that you're either listing or a property that that you're, you know, pitching to list. What are some of the key things that you look out for?
Sure.
So if someone's looking for a property, what should they be avoiding? What should they be really, you know, looking out for that defines a good A grade property versus a you know, C or D grade?
It's a loaded question. I'll try to answer it. Because,
how much time have you got?
Yeah, because I'll tell you why. It really depends on what the criteria is for the buyer, what their budget is, and what they're trying to achieve with that property purchase. If they're trying to achieve a property purchase for them to grow into, is it a mid to long term proposition? Is it a short to mid term proposition? Typically, a really good property is, if you define it by the capacity for capital growth, it's a property that has the most amount of capability of increasing in value, which means it's got a lot of options. Does that make sense? So if you've got a beautiful house, and again, depending on the asset class, but if you've got a beautiful house on a regular shaped block and you can renovate the house, you can knock it down, you can build 2 townhouses or 1 big house, then that asset is going to have good capacity for capital growth. But if that same property has a single dwelling covenant, then it won't grow in capital growth as much as one that doesn't. So something that's got as much capacity for capital growth and has many options and has flexibility to to be attractive to as many demographics in regards to potential buyers as possible, that will grow in value more than something that has less. So if it's, you know, single level unit, I'll give you an example. They're great. And the reason why they're great, they lend itself to, you know, 3 to 4 demographics. You've got a single person, a young couple, an old couple, a couple with a young child, or an investor. So that's like, what is that, 4 demographics? So you've got 4 different types of people that could live in it. So as a selling proposition, as a rental proposition, it's strong.
Yeah.
So villa units are quite good. Villa units, I find, are better than small townhouses, because small townhouses are 1 to 3 demographics, right? Yeah. You know, you don't have grown families can't live in a townhouse. An elderly couple won't live in a townhouse because of stairs unless it's got a master bedroom downstairs. It's limited, right? So a single level villa will perform better, generally speaking, than a small townhouse. What's a small townhouse? Something that's, you know, 20 squares or less.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know if I answered the question in full, but you know, obviously people refer to A-grade properties as, you know, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million properties, but some people can't afford that. But if you've got $1 million budget and you're looking, depending on what your criteria is, if your criteria is just for a family home, then you don't have to worry about whether the land's got any restrictions like weird easements or single dwelling covenants or a short frontage. But if you're looking at it because you want to develop it later on, then, you know, you look at the frontage, you look at any trees in the way, poles in the way, what's the frontage like, what's the depth like, what can you fit on there, things like that. You know, does the street have a character overlay? Mm-hmm. So the first thing you sit with a buyer is, what is your intention with this property that you're buying? What do you need it for? What do you envisage it for? Mm-hmm. And then you've got to cater around that.
Yep.
So I hope that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, it's similar to, you know, the financial advice process. There's no one method, there's no one answer. It depends on what your intentions are and what you ultimately want to do with that asset.
Mm. What about maybe another way of looking at this as well too is, what are the things, I mean, ideally if you can, to try and avoid when you're looking at purchasing property?
Things. Okay, well,
main road.
Things? Again, we're going to generalise here, and people
we have to
comment and say, "Why did you say this?" And so again, I'll preface it. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, because if you need or want to live in a particular suburb, and the only way to buy that type of house or unit or townhouse in that suburb is to buy on a main road, and you've seen the opportunity cost of what you could buy in the neighbouring suburb, you've done your due diligence, and you want to live on that main road, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you do that research first. So to buy a townhouse on a main road, I'll give it, you know, I'll make it relevant. If it's Caulfield or Caulfield South, you know, a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom, brand new townhouse on 300 to 330 square metres, it's going to, on a main road in this market, is going to be anywhere between, you know, 1.8 and 2,050,000, depending on which main road, but just generally speaking. If it's in a side street, then it's going to be in the early 2s.
Yep.
So, but if you really want modern and you really want to be in Caulfield or Caulfield South, and you're happy with everything else bar that main road, then you might be happy with that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But you may go then to Glen Huntly and go, well, I can buy something in a side street for high ones, a brand new townhouse. And I prefer to do that and drive an extra 5 minutes to the grandparents.
Yep.
So you've got to really ascertain what is important to you in terms of ticking the boxes. So, but I can tell you, now that you've brought it up, that what we're finding in this market that's changed, in a less buoyant market where buyers are being critical and unrealistic, properties that have deficiencies like main road, tram stops, bus stops right across from a petrol station or a school or in front of a train station. People want to be close to things but not on top of things. In a buoyant market, they'll forgive it to an extent. In a challenging market, they're less forgiving. And those properties struggle to sell at a premium price. They'll sell, but not at a premium price.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not, rather than it being a no-no or rather than being something that you completely avoid, it's something that you just understand that's going to bring the valuation down of that asset class and account for it accordingly.
Exactly right. And if you're going to buy it, if you're going to buy it cheaper and you're going to sell it cheaper, as long as you make money between the first price and the buying price and the selling price, that's fine, right? It still may go up X%, but instead of buying it for 2 million in a side street or 2.2, and then it's maybe 2.6 in 6 years, maybe not. But I'm just, you're buying for 1.8 and it might be 2,050,000.
Yeah.
So you'll probably make money, right? But less so and different ranges. So that's just do your research and know what your opportunity cost is and just keep that in mind accordingly. That's all.
Yeah, brilliant.
Any tips for bidding at an auction? Now, obviously
sure,
and maybe not necessarily from
more money
from the agent's perspective.
Call Billy and Andrew to get more money.
Maybe not necessarily from the agent's perspective because obviously you're working for the vendor.
No, but I can give tips. Again, generalizing with these tips in this market, don't buy anything before auction. In my humble opinion, unless you're forced to. How are you forced to? If they tell you it's selling and there's only one way of putting your hat in the ring by making an offer prior. Yep. But if it's not, then just wait till auction because chances are an agent will only sell before auction for a few reasons. I'm trying to sell everything before auction. I'm giving all my secrets away. Depending if you've got competitive bidding, obviously. Sometimes you do. And sometimes the vendor's really carefree and goes, we'll see what happens on the day. If it doesn't sell, if we don't get that price, that's fine. But generally speaking, if you're buying it before auction in absence of someone else making an offer, you're probably the only one around. Just wait till the auction day.
Yep.
There's more emotion on the auction day. So if you can check your emotion, but the vendor will have emotion, the agent's probably going to apply pressure on the seller. You might be able to get a better deal. But if an agent's calling you and they're being honest, and they should, saying we're selling it, we've got an offer, you need to give an offer now, or within an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours, or it's selling, that's different.
Yep.
But I find it a little bit surprising when people buy prior.
Yep.
Under auction conditions as well. If it's private sale and they give you subject to finance, subject to a building inspection, it's a little bit different.
Yep. Yep.
But if it's structured as an auction and you can wait till the auction, just wait. Unless you go to the open for inspection and there's like 50 people around every open. Yep. Again, that's an anomaly in today's market. It's not common in today's market. That's my tip.
Yeah. And okay, it gets to auction,
Yep.
You're there, you qualified, you've got your finance, you've set yourself a limit. You don't want to make the process easier for the agent and the vendor, right? But so what do you do?
Yeah, I think I honestly, and you're going to say that I'm biased because I'm the agent, I would have a different mindset as to whether making it easier or harder, it's irrelevant. I would think about, okay, is there anyone else around? Mm-hmm. If there is, it's not about the agent and the vendor, it's about the other people. And it's about showing some aggression, right? And I'll tell you a story in a second, but perception and perceived competition can throw a lot of people off. So if you're aggressive from the get-go, you can scare a lot of people off. There is a tactic to wait to see how it unfolds, but it's going to unfold anyway. Why not try and be aggressive to try and, some people might stop because they think that you'll never stop, and they go, well, I don't want to be left with the ball in my hands in case he does stop. But I'll tell you the perception of just people's perception many, many years ago, and this story stuck with me. I was doing open for inspection, and we had the property staged. I think it was in Bentley, and my dad at the time was driving a red Mercedes, and he wanted to come and see how the property was staged. It might have been his listing, maybe that's why he came to have a look, and I was handling it for him. And he drove and parked in the driveway, so quite like in your face. but nothing untoward. That's just my father. He's very loud. He walked into the property and he goes, I love it, because he loved how it was all styled. I love it. And he said, I'll speak to you later. And he walked out. And I said to the lady who was walking through, I go, what do you think? She goes, doesn't matter. That guy with that Mercedes, he's a buyer. I had to like tell her, no, that's not a buyer. Don't worry. What do you think? But he didn't even, he was just, and he was. It's just perception, right? But I've heard stories of people going to auctions and saying, I stopped because there was one guy who pulled up in a Maserati or, was wearing a Rolex, and he just kept on bidding aggressively, and everyone goes with a budget.
Yeah.
Right? Even if they can afford more, they're not going to pay more for the sake of it. They'll have their budget might be more than you. Might be. That's why you might miss out. But my advice is if you're there to buy and there's other people there with intention of bidding and there's a crowd, bid. The first bid's not going to buy. So just bid. Just make it known to everyone that you're there to buy, and you're going to be in their face in a nice way, not in a intimidating way, right? So a lot of people hang back. What are you hanging back for? Show some strength. That's maybe goes into my personality a little bit. Yep. If there's no one bidding, it's different.
Different approach.
Then I would just match the vendor bid because it's not going to buy it, and you have the first right of refusal.
Yeah.
Why not just match the vendor bid? So that would be my advice. I don't think there's any real benefit waiting. What are you waiting around for? Other people are putting on a show, showing their aggression. Show your aggression. That's my advice.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah.
Love it. Galan, Bills, I think that pretty much rounds it out.
Quick.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it goes super quick once we're on.
That.
Thank you so much.
Back.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on, Galan.
Thank you for doing these. I watched them and I really enjoyed them, so thank you.
Appreciate it. And Bills, thanks again for another podcast.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you. And to our listeners and to our viewers, thank you for your attention. If you've got any questions or if you want to get in contact with Golan, details are in the show notes, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions on what we've talked about or would like to have a chat about your money journey, visit us at 360fs.com.au.
Just a reminder to our listeners that the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and it is not intended as personal recommendations for the audience. Please consider whether the information suits your circumstances before acting on it. This information is provided by Billy Amaritis and Andrew Nicolaou of 360 Financial Strategists Proprietary Limited, authorised representatives and credit representatives of AMP Financial Planning.